The house behind them was like many others in the district, with a red tile roof in the shape of a witch's hat, and walls of light brown stone that in the sun turned the colour of honey. Wooden shutters hung on the windows, painted the usual pale grey that had become ubiquitous after the French Navy sold off its vast stocks of paint very cheaply. To one side was a small barn, and to the other a pocket-sized swimming pool, flanked by two cheap metal chairs that needed a new coat of white paint. A few empty flower pots were strewn about. The front door was open to show a floor of terracotta tiles. There were no personal touches, no patch of herbs or vegetables, no children's toys. It was a gîte, a farmhouse cheaply restored and transformed into a holiday rental. "Salut, Bruno," said Albert. "This is Monsieur Valentin from Paris, who called us. The Silver Clio belongs to him. He was going to be staying here with the dead man." "Monsieur," said Bruno as he shook hands with Valentin, noting the pale, drawn face. He caught the smell of vomit, saw a patch of it by the rear wheel of the blue van. There were more spatters on the front of Valentin's jeans and on his shoes, leather sneakers that looked expensive. His hair was short with blonde streaks, and he wore a dark blue scarf around his neck, tucked into a cream shirt that Bruno guessed was silk. "I put a cradle over the head," said Albert, looking down at the body. It was covered by a fireman's red blanket. Bruno knelt down and lifted a corner of the blanket and saw a spindly metal framework, rather like the ones he put over his winter seedlings. "It's from my garden," Albert explained. "I was picking it up from my sister, and it seemed like a good idea to cover him up. He's been dead for some hours. It's not a pleasant sight." "Mon Dieu," said Valentin. He raised his head to look at Bruno. "I couldn't even tell you if it's him." "Perhaps the fire chief could help you to your car, monsieur," said Bruno, waiting until they left before uncovering the battered shape that had once been a human head. Blood had pooled beneath and behind the man's head. Bits of shattered bone and teeth stood out from the pool. The face was unrecognizable as human, the features savagely, perhaps deliberately obliterated. Bruno closed his eyes and tried to concentrate, forcing himself out from shock and back into professionalism by trying to think what weapon might have done this. Perhaps an iron bar, he told himself. He opened his eyes and looked at the rest of the body. One hand was blood-smeared and swollen, as if the victim might have tried to protect himself. The other hand looked to have been professionally manicured, the nails buffed and polished. An open and empty black leather wallet with brass reinforcements on the corners lay between the dead man's thighs. The dead man was wearing khaki slacks and boat shoes without socks, a plain black t-shirt and a denim jacket. Only the jacket collar bore signs of blood, which suggested he had been knocked to the ground and then his head battered as he lay there. His attacker must have stood over him, probably straddling the body to apply backhand and forehand blows to the head. That was the only way Bruno could interpret the way the blood had spattered. They had experts on that these days at the Police Nationale. He replaced the blanket over its cradle, rose, and on his cell phone speed-dialed JJ, Chief of Detectives for the Département. As usual, he got a recording, left a message, and then sent JJ a brief text message. On the floor by the passenger seat of the blue Ford was an empty bag of potato chips, some sandwich wrappings, and a British newspaper, the Daily Telegraph, from the day before. Bruno took a pair of evidence gloves from his pouch. He noticed that under the seat was a magazine called Antiques Weekly, and some maps and other papers were in the door pocket. He examined one set of papers that seemed to be a rental agreement for the van for 3 weeks from a branch of Avis in a town called Croydon. The renter was identified as Francis Fullerton. Tucked into the Avis folder was a ticket stub from the 7 a.m. Eurostar train the previous day. Bruno checked that the registration number on the ticket